And it hits me, oh my gosh, this is that triangle.
You know, there's explanation for everything that occurred in the Rendlesham Forest incident that doesn't involve aliens at all.
It was completely silent. It comes right over our heads.
He saw a classic flying saucer, really, standing in the clearing.
He turned over to my father and held his hand, and he looked in his eyes, and he said, "We're not alone."
Welcome to Podcast UFO for our live show. We're live every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Please remember to visit the website podcastufo.com for past episodes, blogs, and forums. During the show, feel free to participate live in our chat room. And don't forget to like us on our very active Facebook page.
Hello, everyone. This is Martin Willis, your host, and we have the one and only Alejandro Rojas. He's back from vacation. He's going to help us with the news coming right up. And for our guests this evening for both hours, we have Terry Ray, and he's an author and UFO investigator. And we're going to be talking about his new book. It's called The Complete Story of the Worldwide Invasion of Orange Orbs. And we're not talking just about Chinese lanterns. I've had kind of a fascination with these for a while, and I want to see what he has to say about that. I want to thank everyone for their help and support, and I thank every listener for listening. If you'd like to subscribe to hear the whole full show, go to our website, podcastufo.com, and you'll see right on the sidebar all the information you need right there. And I am ready to bring in Alejandro. But first, Alejandro, did you hear that Stephen Bassett, he called me, I don't know if he called you, and he said that disclosure has really happened? Did you hear that?
Oh, my goodness gracious.
You mean he called me before you?
That.
He called me before. Well, anyway, that April Fool's, buddy.
Oh, you had... Oh, and everybody heard you get me, and you fooled me there, and you have the evidence on the air of that. You trickster.
And I'm not going to edit it out. So...
Oh, man, boy, when I get my hands on you, I'm just going to grab that cute little neck of yours and squeeze and squeeze and squeeze.
Just like last time.
Yep, just like last time.
So tell me what's happening.
Oh, yeah, there are some funny April Fool's ones out there. Oh, we're going to debunk people's April Fools.
Oh, good.
Don't fall for this, people. Okay, the first one, and these are funny. These are funny guys. It's Ryan Sprague. You know this character, right?
Oh, yes, I do. Yeah.
This tricky little guy. He posted this on his Facebook. Just received word from the Sci-Fi Channel that my series pilot, Bigfoot Alien Ghost Hunters, has been approved. Production begins in October in North Carolina. More info to follow.
He does have, he's got a very good keyword string going there, for sure.
Well, I know, and that's why I thought this was plausible. You know, Bigfoot, alien, ghost hunters. I thought some TV show just wants to get it all in there. People love it. I thought, oh, you know, and I tell Maureen, get the name of this show, and she's like, you idiot, you're so stupid. Not like that. She was mean, but she didn't say all those things. But anyway, she was just like, that's obviously an April Fool's joke, and I was like, oh, Ryan Sprague. So he got me. Don't let him fool you. But then I read another one on Facebook, and this one didn't get me because I wasn't going to let it happen again. And this is John Greenwald of the Black Vault. He wrote something about how the X-Files, and I was going to talk about that. We'll talk about that in a minute. It's returning. So the X-Files this summer has got 6 episodes coming back. This is no joke. This is exciting.
Right.
You know, Gillian Anderson, David Duchovny, Fox Mulder and Dana Scully will be back. This summer they're going to do 6 episodes. But he wrote, here's the part that isn't true. He wrote, they want me to be the 3rd FBI agent. And what's funny is most of the people, Ryan and John, most of the people that are commenting on these things they posted believe them. And they're like, that's so cool. Congratulations. So I wasn't the only one to get fooled.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That's not bad. I think you knew this at, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago. I had a whole fake website. I actually made the domain switch over to it if someone clicked on my website. And I put a lot of work. I put about 50 hours into the bogus website. It was a lot of fun. Leslie Kane even loved it. So, but anyway, that was then. I didn't have the energy or time to do it this year.
Even Leslie Kane loved it.
Can you believe that?
Wow.
Yeah. She had a laugh.
That's cool.
That is.
That's
So what's going on for UFO?
in the news. So we already talked about the X-Files. I think that's a big deal because really when you look at it, a lot of UFO researchers feel like the 90s, there was a lull in UFO research for a period of time there. I felt that way when I got involved with this. All of the documentaries and TV shows ended with the debunkers coming out and saying, but it's all just BS. But, things have changed, and I think that's largely because of the X-Files. So this is exciting. X-Files coming back for 6 episodes.
I know, and
this summer.
I can't wait to see what new special effects and stuff they'll be using, and maybe even new thoughts and ideas that they didn't have before.
Some new music would be nice because the synthesized horns, I think the technology's been improved as well.
Yeah.
So we'll see. So that was one of the stories I wanted to talk about. But another one that I'm excited about, Ben Hansen, of the Sci-Fi Channel's Fact or Faked Paranormal Files. Of course, that show is no longer being aired, but that is what he's known in these circles for. He did an analysis when Jimmy Kimmel had on Bill Clinton and asked him about UFOs.
Right.
And it looks like, when Obama was on Jimmy Kimmel recently, the day before, the L.A. Times or L.A. Weekly had written about that Jimmy Kimmel has said he's going to ask Obama about UFOs, and they said, maybe this guy will analyze it, and they posted about Ben Hansen doing this analysis. Well, when Obama was on the show, Jimmy Kimmel had kind of warned Obama, they're going to look into this and every movement and everything you say and analyze everything. And alluding to Jimmy Kimmel possibly knowing about Ben Hansen doing this. And sure enough, Ben Hansen has done it again. So he did this analysis. It's 40 minutes long. So I watched the 40 minutes, and I took notes, and I summarized in a very long story because there was a lot of information. Essentially, Ben's analysis. And what he's saying is that for instance, Obama's breathing faster when they're talking about UFOs. That, to him, shows some sort of nervousness. Also, Obama joked the whole time, was cracking jokes. Really good ones. I thought he was funny.
Yeah, it was funny.
And Ben says this is often used to kind of belittle the person asking questions to hopefully make them feel silly about their question so they move on to a different topic. But he notes that Jimmy Kimmel was not dissuaded. He kept asking questions. And he feels that the body language through most of this, Obama was joking around. But he feels at one moment Obama's demeanor changed. And he says that it changed so much. For instance, he looked down to the ground, and he thinks that, through his body language analysis, that Obama seems to be a very honest person. And he feels that he made an honest statement when Kimmel was really kind of prodding him about information. Obama replied, "I can't reveal anything." And because of various reasons, like some of them I've mentioned, Ben Hansen believes that he was telling the truth when he says that. So Ben feels that either he's been told he can't know or talk about this topic, or he knows something that he can't talk about. He kind of made a funny he compared it to like a guy who would like to go out with his buddies, and he can't because his wife wants him to clean the garage. But he doesn't say, "Oh, my wife said this and that," because, he can't diss his wife in front of his buddies. So he just says, "Oh, sorry, guys, I can't." And he kind of gets sad. He feels that that's kind of what Obama was demonstrating, that same sort of sentiment or feeling. So kind of interesting that Ben should feel that way.
And Ben, for the listener that doesn't know this, Ben is a former FBI agent, and he was trained in that sort of thing. I've talked to him about it on the show before. It's not to say that we can say for sure, but it certainly makes it interesting.
Yeah, it makes me think. I was 100% convinced Obama was joking through the whole thing. I'm still there, but it does make me think. It makes me scratch my head, and Ben in this video is very thorough and professional. So it's a great video. I recommend that people take the 40 minutes to watch.
And I will. You have that embedded, I'm sure, on Open Minds.
Yep.
Okay, so that'll be a link in the show notes. And
cool.
We got one more story.
Yeah, sure. I'll go with this one. Unfortunately, it's a debunking one. I like to put in UFO stories, but we really didn't have a lot. We do have some interesting ones from MUFON on the site that you can go check out. There's like 10 stories I wanted to talk about this week, but I do want to let people know about this one. There is a video out there. It's gotten very popular, showing what looks like a UFO being hauled around by a truck. And someone posted it and said, this is a UFO being transported near Area 51. Not the case. Actually, this video, it looks like it's the same video that was posted years ago when they were transporting, it's like the X-47B. It's this high-tech, cool-looking drone. They were transporting it across the country, and there were sightings of it and people taking pictures, and so there was lots of news stories about this being a UFO. It looks like that same video just taken off of YouTube and then reposted on YouTube. So you could check that out, but it looks like even if this is a new video, it's the exact same thing if you look at the pictures. So this is the X-47B, which is really cool looking. But that's what it looks like, has gotten. Because unfortunately, this person took it, reposted it, and there's goofball news sites out there that are posting it all over the place. And it's kind of frustrating when the news does that, and they don't do their due diligence to find some history around these things. So don't be fooled.
That gets the ball rolling on something like that. We have time. If you'd like to throw out another one of those stories, I'm interested, so go ahead if you would.
Yeah, this one got a lot of attention. This was a Florida witness who says that a silent UFO cloaked itself. So this is a guy, and these were events that happened in December of 2013. This was posted on MUFON, so Roger Marsh, he will post MUFON sighting reports on our site for us and summarize them. This is a guy with his girlfriend, and they say they saw a large boomerang shaped craft at night. They said it was very distinct, that they could see the lights that were going up and down this thing, and there were hard edges to it, and that it kind of cloaked itself and flew away. Very interesting account that is getting a lot of hits on the site, so people might want to check that one out.
All right. And again, those links will be right in our show notes. Well, thank you, Alejandro. Welcome back. I hope you had a good vacation.
I had a great time, and thank you for having me on the show on April Fool's Day. I hope you're not trying to imply something.
You give me something to think about. All right, thank you, and I'll talk to you next week. And everyone hang in there for the quick music break, and we'll be right back with Terry Ray on the Orange Orbs. That music was by Bruce Renier. Thanks, Bruce, for supplying us with some music. And we have Terry Ray on. How are you, Terry?
I'm fine, Martin. How are you?
Great. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. By the way, that music was putting me into a trance. I don't know what that was all about.
That's how
I felt I was drifting off somewhere. Go ahead.
That's how I usually get my guests. I play that in the background. Yeah. Hey, thank you for sending the book along. Is this your first book, by the way? I never asked you that question.
It's my first nonfiction book. I am a novelist by profession.
Ah, that's why it was written so well.
I sent you a second one. Did you get the second one?
I did, yeah. And
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say I did notice this was very well written. And we can talk about that. First of all, if you wouldn't mind, And I didn't really mean to cut you off there, but we can talk about that a little bit later. But if you can tell the listening audience before we get into our topic, just your background, if you would.
Well, I grew up in a steel mill town in western Pennsylvania. Went to Grove City College. I was a military pilot in the Air Force until I was injured. I spent about 6 months in a hospital and got out of the service as a disabled veteran. And I got a teaching degree, a master's, and I taught elementary education. And then in the evening, I went to law school and I became a trial lawyer. And then I decided to get an honest job and became a law professor.
Wow. That's quite a colorful background you have there.
Yeah, I left out a bunch of stuff, but those are the high points.
Wow, interesting. So while you were in the Air Force, did you have a fascination with UFOs all the way back then? And if so, was it ever spoken about?
Well, I had a fascination with UFOs since I was 10 years old. A group of us were out in the late summer, about 10, 11 of us playing football in a big yard, and we heard a loud roaring noise, and a jet came overhead, very low altitude, I'd say about 500 feet. And I think it was probably an F-80. They used to call them Sabre jets. But anyway, and there was he was right behind a very, very strange-looking craft that was nothing like we could ever make, had no wings. And they made a turn right over us and took off in another direction. And we ran to my parents' house, and my mother was in the kitchen washing clothes, and like 11 of us ran into the kitchen, and we told her we had to call the Army because we saw a flying saucer, and she told us to get out. And that was the beginning of my fascination with UFOs.
Wow. Before we move on, I want to just mention something about that. I hear that so often about, some type of fighter pilot or jets flying, following. And a friend of mine who lives in Canada, when I actually told him I was doing a show on UFOs, he told me a story about being out on the deck during a party and seeing two fighter jets flying right behind this disc and watch it take off. Now, the question I have about this, and it's just a wonderment, I would say, is you never hear pilots really talking about being the person in the jet. Do you think it's just the classification of the whole thing?
Yeah, if you're a military pilot, you're forbidden to do it. The government is very strict in that they do not allow any talk about UFOs while you're in the military service.
Have you ever actually heard that said to you as a pilot?
No, I didn't. But I have. I heard talk from some of the older pilots, about things they talk. They talk among themselves. Mm-hmm. And they say, well, you can't be talking about that kind of stuff, So you're just you would probably if you went public, if you're a military pilot and went public about seeing something and you describe it realistically as UFO, you would have a very good chance of being dismissed from the service.
Dishonorable discharge or something like that?
I don't think they'd go that far. They don't want to get you really aggravated.
Yeah.
But there would be some discipline involved.
Now, what about
commercial pilots? They keep their mouths shut, too, because the government has done such a good job of making fools out of people whenever they report a UFO that everybody, actually, even the average person is careful. Let me tell you something really interesting. Only out of 100 people, probably only one or less, maybe in a larger group, maybe 500 people, only one will report a UFO anywhere to any official body. And that is because they are afraid of the repercussions.
I also really think, because of my own experience, that I didn't even know where to report something. I never thought to look
That's
online.
another problem.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and the places that this is something that we're going to be getting into in MUFON. We want to try to get real numbers of how many sightings, how many UFOs are actually in the air. And if let's say in a month we have 1,000 reports to MUFON. Well, what we need to know is how many people, and let's say there's 1,000 people that see UFOs in a month. How many of those report the sighting anywhere? Number one. And if they do report, where do they report? And I can tell you the primary places. There has been some research done on this, and MUFON is not at the top of the list. It's way at the bottom. Number one is the police.
That's who I called. Yeah.
Right. Number two is the media. You call a radio station, you call a TV station. And third, they dial some number, some government number. Whatever they can find in the yellow pages, some government official. And all of those are worthless because, police don't want to be bothered with it.
Right.
The mainstream media, the only thing they'll use it for is for their funny story at the end of the news.
Right. Mm-hmm.
When they bring on the Twilight Zone music and they all laugh and talk about this.
Crack wise.
And the government, as a policy, don't acknowledge that there are UFOs. So. And very, very few people contact MUFON because even though MUFON is becoming much more broadly known because of, I think a lot of it has to do with Hangar 51, their show. Mm-hmm. People are becoming more aware of MUFON. But even at this current moment, I would say if you asked 100 people on the street if you've heard of MUFON, maybe 5 or 10 would have heard of it.
If that, I believe you're right.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So that's something we really have to find out because if let's say we get 1,000 reports in MUFON in 1 month, how many sightings were there actually for us to have gotten 1,000? If you understand what I'm saying. Right.
Yeah.
If we're getting 1/100th or 1,000th of the sightings reported to MUFON, the number of actual sightings is huge.
Absolutely. You can't even imagine. And what percentage of that is unexplainable is probably still low, but if you do the math, it's probably higher than the people that are reporting them.
Well, I have an opinion on these things that are so-called explainable. A lot of in the research I did for my book, I read over 2,000 cases on orange orbs, and I can tell you that the vast majority of them were dismissed, saying it was an identified craft, such as a Chinese lantern, a weather balloon, and that sort of thing. And I know from the description it wasn't either one of those. It was an orange orb. They are vastly different than a weather balloon or a Chinese lantern. Their behavior is. Right. So a lot of these things that are supposedly explained really are not explained. What is offered is merely a spurious explanation.
Right. When you're mentioning this, a lot of times when people claim to have the real reason for things happening, I was just shown an article. Now, the article's old. It goes back to 2011. But there was a guy saying the incident Exeter is totally explained. And I'm reading this article, and they're talking about this refueling plane, and it had strange lights on it. So So there's your answer, and done deal, and this thing was hovering over a house for forever, and the police saw it, and it came back, and on and on. It's really an amazing incident, the whole thing, and but all the people that read that article and just say, "Oh, there it is, it's explained," and that can happen many times in many ways in this field. Really,
it happens, in my opinion, most of the time, and when that it really bothers me that there's this common saying, well. There are probably 5% of these cases are unexplained. That's not really true. A much larger percent are unexplained, and they are explained with some rationale that makes no sense. I've
heard Stanton Friedman say something along those lines. Like he goes by. He's a very statistical person, so he goes by statistics and saying, they say
he lives around here,
That's right. He lives north of us,
down near Pittsburgh. Yeah.
Oh no, he lives in Edmonton, Canada.
Who am I thinking of then?
Well, he probably lived there at one time. You're not thinking of. I think you're thinking of Gordon.
No, I'll think of it.
Stan Gordon. He lives down there.
It could be.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Boy, we really got off on this subject here. Yeah. All right. So let me just ask you this. So you became a lawyer at one time and a professor and all this. Were you into the subject enough publicly at that point through all these different careers?
No.
Okay.
I wasn't. I was very much a believer in UFOs because of what I saw when I was 10 years old, and also just through pure logic. No, to me, it's more illogical to say there aren't, only intelligent life is on Earth. That is more illogical than saying there are countless intelligent civilizations in this universe.
Yeah,
that is far more rational.
I'm with you there on that. The arguments, of course, you've heard them a million times, like they can't get there from here. And there are vast differences. But, I've argued many times, and not to be redundant, but, you get an advanced intelligence will eventually figure out something we have not.
Well, you know what? Einstein already figured it out. Because when he discovered that the space-time continuum is bendable. And he speculated that we could create wormholes by bending space. And these people say, well, if they're a million light years away, there's no way they could ever get here. That's true. If it's linear travel, even if they travel at the speed of light, it would take a million years. But if they bend space,
right,
and through a wormhole, they could be here almost instantaneously. So that really drives me crazy, this thing, like, it would take too long for them to get here. If Einstein has the concept and worked out the numbers as to how you could form a wormhole, which is merely a black hole. It's a hole through the space-time continuum with bent space. If he can figure that out, I'm sure some civilization that's 1,000 years ahead of us figured it out a long time ago.
Right. And, and the other thing is the energy. They would never have the energy. And, here you just hear those different arguments.
But, that's anthropomorphic. That is putting something in human terms that doesn't belong there.
Right.
Because we're measuring how much energy we can produce and saying, well, we couldn't possibly produce that much energy. You're right, we couldn't. But some far advanced civilization, I'll bet, can do it.
Yes, I've had those. I did a couple of debates, and that was part of the debate was, just the fact that we're thinking in our terms today and not what these advanced.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
So I think we're getting along pretty good so far.
So far.
So anyone listening live, you can jump right over to our chat room. Just go to podcastufo.com. And the right sidebar, you'll see our chat room. You can jump right in and ask our guest a question.
Wonder if they're living and they're not alive.
Well,
never mind.
Yeah, that we'll have to.
I just asked.
That we'll have to have that for another podcast.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about your path and what made you actually write this book.
Well, in 2013, that's just when I was I was about to take my exam to become a field investigator for MUFON. I was in Ocean City, Maryland, in the last day of July. I think it was July 31st. And I was sitting out in the balcony facing, we were on beachfront. I was facing the Atlantic Ocean, and I saw to my left, I was all by myself out there. The 3 kids and my wife were like in the room asleep, and I wasn't allowed to watch TV, so I was banished to the patio. Anyway, on the balcony to my left, which would be north, since I'm facing the Atlantic Ocean, to the north I saw an orange dot a great distance away, and it caught my attention because as a pilot, that is not a color you see in the sky. You see you see reds, greens, whites, position lights in general, or the the headlights of an aircraft. But you do not see orange in the sky at night. And so it caught my attention. I just kept watching it, and it kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger until I would say it was about 5 miles away from me, and it was about the size of a full moon. And it was an orange sphere, and it was very, very beautiful. It looked like the setting sun. And there were no lights on it. Everything was illuminated. There was a sort of a soft pastel muted light coming from inside. It was very pretty. And it was about maybe 500 feet off the ground. And it was right along the water's edge, about 5 miles away, and it stopped there. And for about a minute, and then it headed out to sea. I'd say it went out about 10 miles, then stopped out there, and then it went into about a 45-degree climb up to about 10,000 feet, leveled off, flew about 10 more seconds, level flight, and then headed southeast into a thunderstorm. There was a thunderstorm out on the horizon. And I was sort of speechless. It sounds funny. I was by myself, but I didn't know what to think. And so I wanted to run in and tell everybody, but then I thought what the repercussions would be. But I ran and woke up 3 kids and a wife to say I just saw a flying saucer. I don't think it will work out. So I stayed there. And by the way, I had binoculars, so I was able to get a close look at this thing. About 10 minutes later, I saw another orange dot, same place. This thing went through precisely the same flight pattern, and in all, I saw 8 of them.
And they all did the same exact flight pattern.
Exactly. It'd be like if I was given a flight plan in a military jet, and I was supposed to fly certain headings for a certain period of time. That's exactly what that was. So that was not a Chinese lantern. They don't fly flight patterns. They blow with the wind. It was not a balloon. And it was, in my opinion, I'm having been a pilot. I try to keep up with aircraft development. I'm quite sure we have nothing like that. So I have no doubt in my mind that was something not made on Earth.
Now, let me ask you this. While you were sitting there and you're looking out the balcony, I read your book, but I wanted you to tell your story.
Yeah.
I read that part of it, and you went and got your popcorn and all that.
Right.
And this thing continued on. What about a camera?
I wasn't. You know what? There was a camera in there somewhere, but the room was completely dark. And do you have kids?
I have a grown son. Yes.
Yeah. Well, and your wife's sleeping in a room with all these kids.
I got it.
If you flip on, you understand. You just don't do
Okay.
So I felt my way back out of the dark room out onto the balcony again.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I didn't have a camera.
Okay.
What? It's called marital peace.
Yep. Okay. And so
anyway,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I dutifully filed my report with MUFON for Maryland, and got a call from the field investigator, and we didn't talk for very long. He told me it was the best report he's ever seen. And then I told him I was already ready to take my field investigator exam. So he said, "Oh." So he already knew I had some training. But anyway, I talked when I got back to Pennsylvania. I'm from Pennsylvania, MUFON. First meeting I went to, I was all excited about this. And I was telling this group of people at my table about seeing these orange orbs. And they all start laughing, and they said, "Don't waste your time. They're Chinese lanterns." And at that point, that was in 2013.
And these are MUFON people.
Yes, they're field investigators.
Okay.
And I found out pretty quickly that was the ubiquitous opinion throughout MUFON. These things are not taken seriously. They have been somebody decided they were Chinese lanterns, and no matter what came along with an orange orb case, the explanation was identified as a Chinese lantern. And maybe you could tell that to someone who hasn't seen these things, but you can't tell anybody. There's nobody that's ever seen an orange orb that could ever be convinced it was a Chinese lantern. It's impossible. It couldn't be. And, of course, this kind of aggravated me, and because I was all proud of my find. So I decided, well, I'm going to find out what these are, and I'm going to come back and tell everybody. And I thought it would take me a couple of weeks. And it took me an entire year of research. I read over 2,000 cases, and I finally pieced the entire the entire story, just as the book says, the complete story. I pieced it all together as to what's going on. I went back to the 1890s all the way up to 2013, reading cases, and I put it all together, and that's how the book came about.
Okay. Now, had you done any research or looked into this topic before that sighting you had?
No, I did not. Before I was in MUFON, I remember from time to time I'd read in the paper about these orange balls of light are sighted, and then you get to the end of the article and they say that NASA or whoever the official body is says these things merely are Chinese lanterns.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I knew about it. So for all I knew, if you see back then, if you saw a orange ball of light, it was a Chinese lantern. But once I saw these things, I knew that was a ridiculous explanation.
Now, sometimes you hear about these. Well, one of the things you hear often about these is something you said earlier, is that it was beautiful. A lot of people you hear people say that the light was an unusual light, not a typical light more of a light that would glow than shine or something along those lines.
It's actually, I would describe it as mesmerizing. You really can't take your eyes off of it when you see it.
And then the other thing that puzzles me is, for instance, let's talk quickly about the Phoenix Lights. That comment was made also from, I think, Dr. Lynn Katire. Someone said something about they were mesmerizing or beautiful, but some people were saying that you could see through the craft, like to the other side, and some people said that it was like waves, and a lot of times you do hear about triangular formation of these orbs, and sometimes people say that you can see through them, sometimes people say they block out the light. Any comments on that?
Yeah. I don't know what to mean by they block out the light.
I'm sorry, starlight.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. You can. They are somewhat translucent.
Yeah, you do.
You can see something inside, and a lot of people see something that's kind of a dark spot in the middle. And I once I did all my research, I found out what that was, and the Phoenix lights were orange orbs, and orange orbs. They want to be seen. That's what if you want to understand orange orbs want to be seen. They have picked a color and a shape that they know people are going to look at because it's an unusual color in the nighttime sky, and then they do things to entertain people. They form in the cases I've read. I've read descriptions where they get into a square, then they quickly shift. They're in a triangle, then they arrange themselves in a circle, and they almost look. A lot of people say it almost looks like they're dancing together. They do funny little things, and they are known to get into to mimic constellations. They will blink out and all of a sudden be the Big Dipper.
Huh.
And they are up there to be seen. That's what you have to understand, and that's why orange orbs are much different than anything that's ever come into our skies before, because prior to the influx of these orange orbs, seeing a flying saucer was a very, very rare thing. And usually it was some sort of blurry picture.
Hang on just a moment. We have an incoming call. Let me make sure this is about this show. Hang on. Yes, you're on the air at Podcast UFO. Who am I speaking with? They're gone. Okay, it was a New York City number. Hey, since I already interrupted you, let me ask you a couple of questions up on the message board. One was a question I was going to ask you also, but have you concluded what the differences are between the red and orange orbs, or are they the same?
No, they're not the same. The orange orbs are the big ones. They can be the diameter of a football field. The red orbs are what I'd call drones. They're small things. They're usually about the size of a softball up to about the size of a basketball. And these things come up. They're very up close and personal. They come right up to a person, and they're a few inches from a person's face. They move all around their body. It's almost as though they're scanning them. And then they skip away. And I saw one red orb when I was coming back from Cleveland, Ohio. I was on the Ohio Turnpike, and I don't know how far you've gotten in the book, but there is an underwater orange orb base in Lake Erie. And I saw coming from Lake Erie this red thing that moved. It went from horizon to horizon in about 2 seconds. And it was one of these little red drones. They're orbs. They're red spheres, but there's nobody in there. I think they're being manipulated from another place. Orange orbs have something in there. There are vehicles inside of them. So that's the difference. They're two completely different things.
Okay. I'm going to ask you why you think that, but first of all, I didn't want to go too far because a question up there and one I had in mind too is, can you explain the dark spot?
Yeah, the dark spot is the vehicle. The orb is not the UFO. There have been a number of people that have seen what the orange orb is a cloak that the vehicle projects around itself. And there have been a number of people that have watched this happen. They see some sort of craft. They see it in the sky. It's somewhat often described as metallic looking. And then this discharge, which some people describe as a plasma looking thing, comes out of the bottom of the craft. It comes down around the craft, up around it, and it envelops the craft and forms a sphere around it. So what you're seeing, the dark spot is a vehicle, a space vehicle. So all the orange part, all that is a cloak around a vehicle. And another interesting thing is I have a picture of this, by the way, a case I investigated. There can be any number of crafts inside an orb. I have a picture of one with about 12 crafts inside of it.
And how do you see that?
This is a very good picture of it, and you can see it through the orange membrane. You can see the various vehicles in there.
Really?
Yeah. And here's how orbs are often described as splitting into two and then merging back into one or splitting into four.
Yeah, I've heard that.
I can tell you how that works. Let's say there's 5 crafts, 5 vehicles inside this orb, okay? And one of the vehicles is going to leave. What it does is it cloaks itself and then leaves that orb. Are you with me?
Mm-hmm.
And so it looks like there is an orb splitting, but all it is a cloaked vehicle leaving that orb, being cloaked itself. Are you with me?
Okay.
That's how it works. And if it goes back in, it can go back. So now you have a large orb and a small orb beside it. They can make this orb any size, by the way. Some of them they blow them up to be huge. Some of them are just barely enough to cover the craft. So there are different sizes to these things. Obviously, if there's like 10, 12 vehicles inside this, it's a pretty big pumped up orb. It's a large size orb. But that's what's going on. If a vehicle leaves the main orb, it forms its own orb before it leaves. So it looks like there's 2 orbs now.
All right. Well, how are you? Just a question for you. And how are you? You sound very definitive. First of all.
Yeah. That's because I went crazy for a year.
Okay.
I did. It was a total obsession with me. I read over 2,000 cases. You know how long that takes?
Yeah.
A long time. And I don't think anyone else ever did this before.
Now, before we get off of that right there, were all these MUFON cases?
Yeah.
And are the files readily available to anyone, or just because you're a field investigator?
Because I'm a field investigator, I can get everything. I have my own ID number. I can get into the private files, and I'm able to extract the field investigator's report, all the excuse me, all the documents that are attached, all the photos, videos. I can get all that. So the average person couldn't do that.
Uh-huh.
The average field investigator could do that, but that's generally not what field investigators do. They are one and done. What I did is something that I'm trying to encourage in MUFON. We have, I don't know how, maybe 1 million cases or more, but almost nobody connects the dots. Do you understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. They're just, it's a sky full of stars, and no one's drawing the lines in these things. And what I did that is unique in UFO research is that I connected all the dots with the orange orbs to form a complete story of it. And I think we need to do more of that.
Mm-hmm.
It gives you a context.
Now, you were saying that the orange orbs are generally larger, but I have heard people talk, maybe that you got the colors wrong or whatever, but people have talked about a small orb in a house or in a backyard.
Right.
I think there's quite a story, I think, about some little girl in the backyard in an orb. Maybe she was hurt or something. Are you familiar with that one?
Well, I'd have to get the details. I've read so many of these, but I'm sure I read it.
How when you have been talking about, the vehicles inside the orbs, how is that being received by other people? Other investigators, or how's your book?
Well, you know what? The average person on the street, I think, is more open-minded about it than MUFON is, because MUFON has been around a long, long time. Since the 1960s. Mm-hmm. And, there's sort of like any organization, after it's been around for a long time, I think they develop group think on things. Uh-huh. And, there's sort of this understanding among, the members that certain things are a certain way. And it's they're not, in my opinion, as open-minded as they should be. Maybe they were in the very beginning, but I think there are people that have just been in a MUFON for like 40, 50 years, and they're kind of like set in their mind what is what. And they really aren't, many are not open to new suggestions. So once I explain it, I think they don't want to admit that it makes any sense, but I can see from the look in their eye, it makes sense.
Now, so you read these 2,000 cases.
Yeah.
But I understand that is a big, huge undertaking. But what made you come to certain conclusions? Let's go back to the vehicles, for instance, is because they were splitting off, which I have heard before, that type of thing? Or what made you come up with these different conclusions that
all the various descriptions that I read of orb activity. Once you read the book, you have my book now, and I included just a small number of cases in there, probably, 100 or so. But they were representative. Those aren't all the cases. They're representative of how I identified certain things in terms of orb behavior or what they do. And as I said, I connected the dots. I read, I started seeing certain things repeated a number of times, the same thing. And I just started piecing this whole thing together until I got a really good picture of what's going on with these orbs, what they do, what the cloaks are all about, even, the traffic patterns. I was able to establish what their traffic patterns were by going through each case and noting the direction they were coming from and going to. And I was able to figure out the orbs in the United States come from 4 different locations. And I was able to determine that by charting each case I read.
Mm-hmm. You know what? We have about 6 minutes left to the top of the hour, and I just realized that you were going to make some type of announcement.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead. Fire away.
Well, this is actually a life lesson to everybody that's listening. Often people say, well, what can one person do? There's a problem. What can one person do? Well, this is a good story as to what one person can do. As I said, in 2013, when I saw these orange orbs, the almost accepted dogma of MUFON is that they are Chinese lanterns. Mm-hmm. And since my book came out, it's been doing very well worldwide. And a number of field investigators are reading it. And it's made its way all the way up to the state directors and then to MUFON headquarters. And I have sort of accumulated some disciples who are picking up on what I did, and some of them are connected with the headquarters. And the powers that be have become so influenced by my book and some of the work that some other people are doing, that after they read my book, they sort of began doing what I'm doing, that MUFON headquarters out in California has decided to do something they've never done before. They are forming a specific research project. They're going to call it Project Orange, created to study one phenomenon, and that is the orange orb phenomenon. And there are 4 members right now. I'm a member. Bill Burns is a member. I'm sure you know Bill. You know Bill?
Bill, I'm sorry, last name?
Bill Burns.
Bill Burns, yeah.
He does UFO Magazine, and he was on UFO Hunters. He's
I'm going to be on his show in a couple of days, actually.
He's like Mr. UFO.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a guy by the name of Bob Spearing. He's from New Jersey. He read my book, and it sort of inspired him. He's doing a lot of detailed work using a lot of computer apps to sort of piece together the things that I was doing. He's using Excel and spreadsheets and all sorts of things. He is on the a project member, and Erica Lukes, she's a state director in Utah, and she also works with MUFON headquarters. She's also on the project. So that is a 180-degree turn that was made since last October.
And your book was released when?
October of last year.
Okay, so that's what you're talking about.
It's made a tremendous difference in the thinking in MUFON. It really has, to the point that they're doing something they never did before. We're going to have Project Orange.
Yeah.
And we're going to do a lot of in-depth studies, documentation. We're going to be going on, various investigations. I want to hear one of the first things we're going to do.
Sure.
What we want to do is completely do away with this Chinese lantern thing. We've got to get rid of that idea and move on. And what we're going to do is, Bob Spearing and I are working on this in particular. We are going to do a map of the United States and find the hot spots. There are places that orange orbs visit daily. People come; they know where to stand, and they'll see them come out every night. What we're doing is we're going to map them, and what we're going to do. By the way, do you know what night of the year, or have you gotten this far in the book? What night of the year that the sightings go up 1,000-fold?
Wasn't it July 4th?
Right, 4th of July. That's because the orbs want to be seen, and they know that probably 230 million people are going to be looking at the sky that night.
I've also heard people argue that that's when the Chinese lanterns are out there. I've heard that argument, just to throw it out there.
Sure, they can make the argument, but if you look at the characteristics of what a Chinese lantern does, an orange orb does, it's sort of like comparing a bird to a blimp. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. They're nothing alike. I mean, once you see an orange orb, you will never say that. You will laugh when someone says that was a Chinese lantern. They are so different. But anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to publish this map throughout the country, through news media and everything, and tell people to go this coming 4th of July to one of the hot spots. Take their cameras, take their videos, and I predict we're going to get a lot of converts this 4th of July.
How about that? Do you, for the first hour listeners, do you have a website you can throw out there, or where to get your book?
I'll tell you, you can get it on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, whatever. But I would like to recommend that you get it on the MUFON bookstore online, because the money goes to MUFON. Rather than making Amazon rich, I would rather see MUFON get the money. So I would suggest they go to it's called ArcStar, ARCSTAR. But if the easiest way is just to go to the MUFON website. Anyone can find it, MUFON.com, and you will see on there books. Just click on books, and I'm the #1 seller there.
All right, that's it for this hour, and hang in there after the music break for hour 2. Well, that was by Kerry Lloyd Whitehouse. He is in Ireland, and he supplies some of our music, and that was probably for some movie. He does a lot of music for different movies, kind of spooky and mesmerizing once again. So we're back with Terry Ray, and this hour we're going to be hitting on a subject that has to do with what is valid UFO evidence. We're going to touch on that and a number of other things and continue to talk about. Terry, you're back, aren't you?
I am back.
And I would like to have you pick out a couple of cases and talk about them that you wrote in your book. Just one in particular that you find is a really interesting case, if you would.
Okay. One case. Let me back up a second. There have been landings of these orbs, which means the vehicle has landed, which is in the cloak with the orb. Anyway, and there have been a number of people that have seen the people, whatever you want to call them, the beings that are piloting these orbs, have seen them come out in very close proximity. There are two types. There is the tall being. They're about 8 to 9 feet tall. They wear a black, shiny, skin-tight suit of some kind, and they are very, very strong. And their suit is sort of shiny black material. And then there are the smaller ones, and they are about 4 feet tall. And they are a lighter color, and no one is quite sure what exactly they have on their skin, whether it's just skin or whatever it is. Anyway, here's the point. Here's an example of when a case where these were seen together. It was I'm trying to think. I think it was North Carolina. I don't remember, but I think it was. There was a farmhouse, and they saw the orbs, the orange orbs, going overhead, and there was to their, if you came out their front door, to their right, there was a big tall hill, a pretty steep hill, and it looked like the orange orb landed up there. So they climbed up the hill. It was a whole family. There were about 5 of them, including a grandmother who climbed up. Anyway, when they got to the top of the hill, there was a vehicle parked there, a space vehicle. It no longer had the orb. They had turned off the orb. And they saw the tall beings and the small beings together. And their description really made an impression on my mind. They said when they watched them, it looked like human beings at a playground. The tall beings were sort of standing around conversing while the little ones were playing, running around playing like children, which I found fascinating. I thought, well, that could be what we're looking at. The smaller beings, that's what they look like when they're kids, and then they grow up to be 9 feet tall. But I thought that was a fascinating case to get an insight as to the relationship between the big ones and the little ones.
Mm-hmm. Now, sometimes you hear people talking about plasma balls.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to address that, and then I have a question up on the message board.
Okay.
What do you say to that? I'm not going to say debunking or anything, but there's probably situations where there is plasma, I would think.
Well, for all I know, I really have no idea what this this cloak is made of. But for all I know, it could be plasma. It sort of has the characteristics of plasma. Its appearance looks like a mix between a solid and a liquid. Sometimes they are somewhat shimmery, and a lot of people have said about these cloaks that it looks like it's moving around. The orb itself, the surface, is moving around, and if someone told me that was plasma, I would say that's very plausible.
Okay. And question up on the message board. Have you ever collaborated this data from MUFON with other places such as NICAP or NUFORC, anything like that?
No, I have not. I know they are interested, and I've had contact with certain people in other organizations about my book. So they're interested, but I've never really it's kind of hard. Right now, you have these proprietary things that you deal with. Like MUFON has its own cases. And you have to be a member to see them, to a certain extent, just by being a regular member. And then you can see more and more detail when you're a field investigator. And I don't know that MUFON would be thrilled. It would be hard to collaborate, if you understand what I'm saying. I would have no way of giving permission to anyone else to go into the files, MUFON files, and work with me on these files.
There's been a little bit of, I don't want to say controversy, but I know a long-time investigator that was trying to have someone at MUFON give a witness in a case his number. Say, I want that person to be able to call me because I've been researching this case on my own.
Right.
And they refuse to get involved in that. Is that just like policy?
It is. That's one of the first things you learn. There's a reason for it. People, because of the stigma attached to reporting a UFO, people, if they think their personal information would be released to somebody else, often will not talk to you. Mm-hmm. They want to know that this will remain completely confidential. We are not allowed to give, when we write a report, we're not allowed to give an address or a complete name of anybody. We can use first names or a pseudonym, but confidentiality is sort of the rule of the day when it comes to MUFON cases. And as I said, there's a reason for it.
Well,
people don't want it to get out.
Yeah, you also want to have a safe place for people to report where they're not going to have to worry about that.
Right.
So I understand that. Have you ever investigated personally an Orange Orb case or an Orb case?
Oh, yeah, quite a few of them.
Is this like many years after the fact or right after?
Oh, no. Since I started writing about orange orbs, now my state director sends me most of the cases, or I'm called in on a case. So I'm sort of the go-to orb guy in Pennsylvania.
I see. Uh-huh.
And I get called by other field investigators too.
Wow.
Who want an opinion on something. They'll send me a video, they'll send me a photo, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And they'll want to know have I ever seen anything like this, or what's my opinion on it, that kind of thing. So I'm sort of become a consultant in a way, unpaid.
Yeah, right. Now, when you mentioned earlier, we were talking about beings and the different sizes and all that.
Yeah.
First of all, someone on the message board wondered why you suggested that the taller ones were strong. What made you...
because they have been seen doing some very, very heavy lifting and carrying some things that the witness said it would take 5 men to lift that, and one of the tall beings was lifting it and carrying it. That's been mentioned a number of times in a number of cases. So that's why I would conclude they're pretty strong.
Now, when you're talking about these beings and the orbs, the tall ones, the short ones,
yeah,
are there many cases that they're actually saying the same thing?
What do you mean?
That they're actually seeing beings coming out of these orbs?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Quite a few cases.
And in different areas, different witnesses?
All over the country.
Wow.
All over the country. And this one poor woman, she lived on a farm and saw the orbs come down, and she was out on her porch, and the orb came down, and then she saw something moving, and then something was coming out of the orb. She didn't know what it was. As they got closer, she saw there were about 10 of the really tall beings, and she said they ran like a deer. She'd never seen anything run so fast in her life. But at that point, they were running like in the direction of the farmhouse. So she went in, got everybody together, locked the doors, and pulled down the shades, and she was very much afraid.
That sounds like a case I've heard before where they were actually shooting and stuff.
Yeah, I felt bad for her because I don't think she quite understands. I think she thought MUFON was a government organization or something, because she said, we're frightened, can you please come help us? And we're not equipped to do that, and the government isn't going to do it because they won't admit you have a problem.
When I very first heard of MUFON and what it stood for, I thought it was a government organization.
Yeah, a lot of people do.
Yeah. Now,
and she was coming to us for help, for her safety.
Right. Wow. Now, one of the things that comes to mind when you're talking about these landing cases, has anyone researched any trace evidences of any of these orbs?
Yeah. I haven't read of any of that happening, but I've been told that people have done some trace evidence. I don't know of anything personally. None of the cases I read mentioned anything about any trace evidence. There were descriptions of marks being left on the ground, like circular marks, that kind of thing. But in all the reports I read, I didn't read of anyone doing any soil analysis or anything along that line.
I see. What about other countries?
Well, MUFON has about 60 countries that are members, and this is going on all over the world. Do you have my book there?
Yes, I do, and I saw your map and everything.
Yeah, there's the map. There's a chapter near the back called "Around the World," and I have cases about 15, 20 cases from China, India, South America, Japan, Ireland, they're all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
Exact same description.
I think I mentioned to you earlier, I didn't get a chance to get through your book, but I still like to ask questions, even if I know the answers, just so, the listening audience out there can...
Because they didn't read it yet.
Right, yeah. And I want to talk to you about the UFO evidence in just a second, but I wanted to find out if you can just throw another case that was really interesting you as you were looking through all these 2,000 reports.
Yeah, I'll get another one. This happened, I think it was in Pennsylvania. There were a group of hunters out in the fall, and they had camped out. And they saw, through the trees, these round orange globes coming along. It looked like they landed in an opening not far away, maybe a half a mile away. And two of the guys said, "Let's go see what it is." And the rest of them weren't interested. They wanted to sit around the fire. So these two guys went, and they went into this open field, and there was no orange orb. However, they did see a vehicle they said was about the size of a large van. And they saw two guys. They said the one guy described it like it's two guys out looking at an engine trying to figure out what the matter is, They were looking over their craft, and they seemed to be discussing something with one another. They were two of these large beings. And the beings at some point heard them, and they were at this point maybe 300 feet away. They heard them, and they just turned and looked at these two hunters, and then they turned away. Then the hunters said that they were starting to get a little uneasy at this point, and they decided they were going to leave, but they couldn't. They were moving toward the craft, and they couldn't stop moving toward the craft.
Wow.
There was something pulling them. And they said they were pulled all the way to the craft, and these two tall beings, I don't know if they were guys, I assume they were guys, but maybe not. Anyway, took them inside the craft, and they didn't go into great detail, but they said they did things to them that were disgusting and humiliating, like to their bodies. And then they let him go.
Similar story you hear a lot.
Yeah.
I'm going up to a question here. Earlier you mentioned that there was a good photo of an orb that looked like it had 12 crafts inside. Has the picture ever been analyzed by a photo specialist like Bruce Maccabee or D'Antonio or anyone like that?
Well, it has been circulated all through MUFON, and no one has ever gotten back to me about it. But we do. I'm on as I said, I'm a member of the Orange Orb project team, and we have a video and photographic expert, and that is one of the first things I'm asking him to do.
Yeah, Mark D'Antonio, I believe. I know he's at least one of them, one of MUFON's. So is that picture not available to the public at all?
The picture I have?
Yes.
Well, I'll tell you what. You want me to send it to you?
Would I have permission to put it on my website?
Sure.
All right, I'd like to have that. That would be great.
I asked the person who took it if I could circulate this publicly, and he said, yes, I may do that. So you can just tell me after the program, whatever, and you can put it.
Yeah, I'll put it right in the show notes.
Yeah,
you don't have to write anything down.
It's a crazy looking thing. It really is. I've never seen anything like it. It looks like a pig. Literally, it looks like a pig. And your listeners, when they see it, I'm not sure about this, whether there are vehicles either entering or exiting, a number of them at the same time. I don't know which direction they're going, but, they can decide for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a fascinating picture.
I can't wait to see it. And so the listener can go into the show notes. That'll be in there tomorrow, which is Thursday.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. Also, I would like to ask, one of the people that just joined the message board said that he saw himself a green orb, and I think I read something about that in your book.
Yep. There are. Let me just. I haven't mentioned this yet, but the orbs, the vehicle inside the orb can make the orb any color they want it, and the orbs have been. The orbs have been seen to change colors right in front of the witness's eyes. It's orange, and then it's red, then it's green, then it's blue, then it's rainbow colored. That's what they do. That's part of entertaining people.
Yeah,
and
ask more about that.
And there's another thing that's often seen too, which I haven't mentioned yet. It's a blue beam that comes out of these orbs. That's how they put things on the ground or extract things from the ground. It's always blue, the beam that they use for depositing things or extracting people, which includes their own, passengers. They put them down with a blue beam. There was they actually picked up a cow with a blue beam, an entire cow. Really?
Now, these are just witness testimonies and different reports.
Yeah,
basically,
they
right?
are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
but I mean, you can read them, and these aren't. They're very credible. I mean, the details they give. I'm an old trial lawyer, and I can tell a liar from a mile away. And these are. I did dismiss some of the cases I read because I thought this is not real. It sounds like someone who wants to, write his own screenplay. You can tell. But so maybe 10% of the cases I did not bother with because they weren't credible. But every case I used was extremely credible.
Now, what do you? Can you get more into elaborating why you think that these things are entertaining us, or why they'd even want to?
Yeah. You want to talk about that now?
Yeah, sure.
I think here's my opinion. They have decided, rather than to be stealthy, which they were at one time, and they were very infrequently seen or photographed. They're not starting in about 2003. They made a decision to become very visible, and that's why they're orange in a night sky. They could be flying along without being seen. The metal or whatever frame they use of their vehicle up in the sky, you'd never see it. But instead of a vehicle that you can't see, they've decided to sort of like dress up for Halloween. They have this huge, shining orange globe up there. So they clearly have decided, instead of hiding, they now want to be seen. And they go where the people are. They appear over. If you look in the book, I have a satellite picture that shows the lights of the big cities in the United States. Then I did a map of every orb that's ever been seen in the United States, and you can lay one on the other, and they match up perfectly. So the orbs are going where the people are. They want to be seen, and so that led me, this. Then I get into my own speculation. What conclusion I come to. I'm thinking, why would they want to be seen, and why do they go out of their way to have people look at them by being entertaining and being having different colors, being in dancing with one another. In my opinion, they're trying to condition us to see them and not be afraid of them. And I told you the old lady, the farmer lady, was really afraid, but that's because she saw these very tall creatures running toward her farmhouse. But in general, most people describe these orbs as being beautiful, mesmerizing, peaceful. It is a very peaceful, muted pastel color. And I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to condition us not to be afraid of them. And, their numbers have been increasing dramatically over the last 10 years. And it's all over the world. And in my opinion, I think what they're doing is they're getting us ready to actually deal with them personally.
Wow. You never know. I think in general people are going to be more acceptable as, more science comes out about the possibility of life elsewhere. I think people are just getting more attuned, I think. Question, besides the Phoenix lights, have there been any other mass sightings of orange orbs that come to mind?
Oh, yeah. They're going on all over the place. I mean, Phoenix lights, it's really interesting. That was a relatively small sighting of orange orbs, but it was the one of the first that got much publicity. But, I mean, these things, they show up when there's thousands of people watching a fireworks display. As soon as the fireworks are over, they come out. So they've been seen by huge crowds. And if anybody who's listening wants to see what an orange orb looks like, go on YouTube, Google orange orb videos, and you can see about 500 of them. Mm-hmm. They are everywhere. It's not like, you have to be somebody special to see an orange orb video. And they're everywhere because they have been seen everywhere. They're all over the place, all over the world. They're like mosquitoes. Really, they're everywhere.
Yeah. One question comes to mind. Has anyone ever reported any sounds with these? Or do they always say that they're silent?
No, they are. That's what's eerie about them. That's what was unsettling to me. I'm accustomed, having been a pilot, I'm accustomed to hearing noise. Jets make a lot of noise, and so do helicopters. Mm-hmm. But these things gliding along, being absolutely silent, to me, that's the eerie thing about them.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that was my sighting. I had no idea that any of them would have been quiet or, no sound at all. And I think that's the thing that spooked me the most. When I wasn't really even paying attention to UFOs, I had a sighting and kind of woke me up to it.
Yeah, right. Well, one thing I'll say about I said I think these beings are trying to get us used to not be afraid of them because, if you introduce something into a culture too quickly, you can disintegrate the culture. It's happened to many of the primitive tribes in the Amazon and the South Pacific when Margaret Meads first started doing her investigations down there. And she, introduced modern technology, and it just totally destroyed their culture because everything they believed in was decimated by these new realizations. And I'm sure these people who are flying these orange orbs have done this hundreds, maybe thousands of times to other planets. And I think this is just part of their plan, how you acclimate a group of people to introduce yourself to them without destroying their culture. You do it very slowly, and you don't frighten them. And I think that's what they're doing.
Right.
And one thing I want to mention, they have not engaged in any violence, and they have certainly had the opportunity. They have been chased by jets, chased by helicopters, and they always just peacefully leave. And I'll tell you something that indicates to me that they don't want to fight with us. I told you they they appear in the populated areas mostly because that's where the people are. There's only one large metropolitan area where orange orbs have never appeared. Never.
Washington, D.C.
Right.
Yeah. I only know that because I read your book.
Yeah. And the reason is, okay, Martin, what's the reason?
Oh, because of all the defense systems
right
there.
Right.
Yeah.
Ever since 9/11, that's the most heavily guarded city in the world. There are thousands of surface-to-air missiles around the city. You've got Andrews Air Force Base with fighter jets ready to go at any second. And these people know that. And they are not going to provoke a war, which is what would happen. If they flew over, after 9/11, if they flew over Washington, D.C. right now, there would be, 500 missiles aimed at them.
Well, do they show up on the radar as far as you know?
I don't know. I don't know about orange orbs. None of the cases I read had any radar information on it.
All right. One of the things we are moving along now. We have a half hour left, and I don't want to leave this till last. We were going to talk about valid UFO evidence.
Right.
So
yes. All right. One of the major criticisms I've had of my book is that I will hear from, and a fair number of field investigators have said this to me, said you have an interesting book, but you don't have any real evidence there. All you have is, eyewitness testimony, and that's not evidence. I beg to differ. Having been a trial lawyer for over 10 years, I can tell you that eyewitness testimony has put people to death. Courts, our legal system highly values eyewitness testimony. And as a matter of fact, in most cases, like in most criminal cases, the main testimony in the trial is eyewitness testimony. Let's say there are a group of 20 people that see a guy shoot another guy. They bring in all 20 of those people. They ask them, and they identify the person that shot the man. Yeah, they pointed to the defendant. Tell us what happened. They tell them what happened. If those are credible witnesses, and the credibility is established by cross-examination, and the defense attorney is going to try to rip them apart. But if the jury believes that those witnesses are being credible, they could very well find that man guilty of first-degree murder, and the judge could very well sentence that man to death. And that's all on eyewitness testimony.
It's funny. I had that argument with Seth Shostak from SETI. And, I asked him, what about the credible eyewitness accounts of observers like astronauts and things like that? And he went right into a tirade basically saying that eyewitness testimony is never used as very weak evidence and never used as solid evidence in a court of law. He actually said that.
That's funny. He apparently has never been in a trial. What do you think all these witnesses are on the stand to do?
Mm-hmm.
They're up there telling the jury what they saw, what they heard, what they smelled, what the man looked like, what he did. That's the backbone of a criminal trial, is eyewitness testimony. And our legal justice system considers eyewitness testimony, if it is credible, to be enough to convict someone, possibly sentence them to death or put them away for life. And MUFON won't even accept it as a credible witness to establish that a UFO was there. That is ridiculous. If you think about it,
So what are they asking for? More witnesses, or
it's as I said. There's a mindset in MUFON. They go, well, I want to see something real. Like, okay, what's real? Soil samples, radar. Yeah, you have that. And in a trial, sometimes you have ballistics testimony, fingerprint testimony, whatever. But you also have a great deal of eyewitness testimony. And, if our legal system is willing to test eyewitness testimony beyond a reasonable doubt to come to a conviction, good Lord, we as members of MUFON can't judge the credibility of eyewitness testimony and come to a reasonable conclusion as to whether or not it's credible and therefore good evidence.
So are you saying basically that MUFON is being more cautious than or like a good old boys club?
A little of both. They're not being, to me, it's not rational. I mean, anybody who knows anything about eyewitness testimony in our legal system knows that it is, the backbone of evidence in a criminal trial, any kind of trial.
I remember I had Bruce Maccabee on, not the last time he was on, but the first time he was on, and I asked him about how strong is photographic evidence, and he says, well, it has to be coupled with a really good witness, testimony. So, it's not...
That's a contradiction right there. He's going to trust the eyewitness testimony concerning the photo, but he won't trust the eyewitness testimony to testify, to bear witness to what he saw.
Two different people.
Oh.
Yeah. No, I'm talking about Bruce Maccabee, the photo analyst.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, he the other person I was talking about was from SETI.
Okay.
Yeah. Bruce Maccabee was saying that besides the photo or video, whatever it is he's researching, that you have it means really nothing unless the witness is strong.
Okay, so he is giving value to a witness.
Yes.
Okay, I mean, just think about it. Let's say this 4th of July, people turn out all over the place to these hot spots to see orange orbs. And so, in one place, 1,500 people say they saw the orange orbs, okay? And someone investigates this. And basically all they have are 1,500 people all telling exactly the same story. They're going to discount that because it's eyewitness testimony? Please. What better proof could you have than 1,500 people coming up with the exact same description of the same thing? That's very, very credible. And a reasonable person should be able to conclude that that is a fact as to what happened, which is what juries do. And we're really missing the boat in MUFON by having a very unrealistic standard when it comes to eyewitness testimony. They think it's worthless.
Wow. I had no idea that stand was being taken with MUFON.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Hear it all the time. You hear, well, that's what he said, but I want to see some real evidence. Well, what do you mean? What do you think eyewitness testimony is? It's one of the best forms of evidence that we have in any situation. A police officer goes out and he starts asking people, what did you see, right?
Yeah.
He's trying to get a picture of, from eyewitnesses what happened.
Now, not to get off topic too far, but Tinley Park, do you happen to know of that situation? And Tinley Park in Chicago.
Was that the building where it was an apartment building?
No, this was...
okay, go ahead.
This was also during a baseball game and stuff like that, but it was a massive sighting, but I was wondering, I was thinking that was orange orbs, but it may not have been, and that's why I'm saying I might be getting off topic here.
I don't remember reading that was it a sporting event?
I think it was, but this went on for quite some time. I think it started. But anyway, we were talking. You said earlier about if anyone wants to see orange orbs, go on to YouTube and you'll see a bunch of them. And some of them, I have watched a number of them myself. Some of them are very plain to see that they're Chinese lanterns, and some aren't. And the frustration of Chinese lanterns is pretty high. And as far as investigators, I can understand why, sort of understand why people say, pass it off as lanterns, because it is frustrating.
Well, if they know the characteristics, that's one of the reasons I think my book has made such a big difference. If you know the characteristics of orange orbs, you would not mistake it for a Chinese lantern.
And does the same thing go for flares as well?
Sure. Because flares have a certain, if they're shot from the ground, they have a certain trajectory. They go up and they go down. If they're dropped from the air, it's the same thing. There's a certain behavior of flares, and there's a certain behavior of orbs, and they are not at all alike. They're totally different. First of all, they fly against the wind frequently. No, a Chinese lantern can't do that.
Right.
So there are things you can look at where you can rule out a Chinese lantern right away.
I brought up that argument to someone one time, and they said, well, you get to different altitudes and there's different wind currents, and they go in different directions. I don't know if that's true or not.
Well, yeah, but that's usually the upper air. I mean, yeah, you have the high altitude wind currents, but you're talking up 40, 50,000 feet, where they have these dramatic shifts.
Not 100 feet.
No.
Yeah.
No.
All right. A question sort of came up on the message board, and that is, you're pretty outspoken when it comes to MUFON, but you're in MUFON. Do you get flack for that, or people just know you as being outspoken?
Both. I'm an outspoken, period. But I'm a product of my grandmother. My grandmother always taught me, when you see something, speak your mind. If you have something to say, speak your mind. She always used to say it to me, and that's what I do. I let the chips fall. I try to speak the truth. What I know to be the truth, and if someone doesn't like it, it's not my problem.
The whole truth and nothing but the truth.
Right? Yeah. If you're telling the truth, you shouldn't worry about it.
I agree. But how do they view you with your attitude? I mean, do they live with it, or have you been threatened at all?
Some do, some don't. Some say he's a crackpot, but there are the younger field investigators tend to be much more open-minded about these things, and toward me. So those who have been around forever and think they have it all worked out. They don't like that. I don't agree with their point of view, and I have a new point of view.
It's just probably just the passing down of, like an old school attitude.
Absolutely, that's what it is.
Yeah. Let's see. So we pretty much covered the valid UFO evidence. How about let's touch on another. I mean, your stories are interesting here. Any other one can come to mind you can kind of go through?
Oh boy, there was one over the. This had been seen a number of times. This one was going over. It was out in L.A. And it was. Are you familiar with Los Angeles?
Oh yeah.
There's I think it's Interstate 10. Is the big one, goes north and south. It's one of them. Anyway, this is right near L.A. And there was this thing that stopped all the traffic, all right on the freeway. It was just before an overpass, and there was a sphere with a being inside of it that was sort of walking inside, like walking in the sphere, but making it move. It was one of the bigger ones, one of the taller ones. But it's like I've seen pictures of these big balloons. People climb inside and they float on water. I don't know if you've ever seen it or not. They blow up thing. A lot of people said it looked a lot like that. But they said the being was making the really awkward movements as it was doing this, but it was enough. It went the whole way across, like 6 lanes of, the highway.
Probably with the 105 or something. Or is it?
Could be. I don't know. I don't remember what route it was. But anyway, it went all the way across and then just disappeared. But that image has been seen a number of times. I don't know if it's like a toy for the kids or, I don't know what it is. It almost looks like that. Like, that it's something that, the kids driving the parents nuts inside the orange orbs and they send them out. And really, I don't know how else to describe what they're doing. Actually, another thing, too, with some orange orbs, there are the strangest little things. Sometimes the orange orb is up there, and you will see it looks like a little tiny orb is coming down. It looks like there's almost like a string attached to it. But several of them, they'll come down, and then they'll go back up again, almost like.
Yep.
I'm thinking, you know what? That looks like parents amusing a kid. They're putting them in a little orb and letting them go up and down. Honest to God, that's what it looks like to me when I see that.
Yeah, you see, there are a number of actually filmed sightings that you see. This little, like, some people think it might be like a drone or a probe that comes out of this vehicle or whatever it is.
Yeah,
It's really pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
Couple of questions up on the message board. What do you consider the best case, the most compelling, unimpeachable?
Oh, boy. I don't know if there's one best case because there are so many different – there are best cases in a lot of different areas. The one I found really fascinating, there was only one of them, was we're talking about wormholes and how they could get here instantly rather than taking a million years to do it by bending space. I found one case, and it's right near the end of my book, where a woman is describing something, and if you know anything about what a wormhole is supposed to look like, the way Einstein described it, this is a perfect description of a vehicle dropping out of a wormhole. It's absolutely fascinating. I mean, and this was not a really well-educated woman. It's just I think she was like cafeteria worker or something like that. Nothing against cafeteria workers, but it wasn't like she was some PhD type. And anyway, she was just describing this, and I don't think she's read about Einstein and wormholes to try to incorporate that into a story. But her description is a perfect description of a vehicle dropping out of a wormhole and then a wormhole closing up.
Wow. We have, I think it looks like maybe 8 minutes or so left. So a couple of questions. You seemed pretty convinced, this is off the message board, that they are alien craft without using those words. What made you come to that conclusion?
Well, based upon my life experience and based upon my career as a military pilot, I have a pretty good idea as to what it takes to fly something. And everything we have is flown with an airfoil, which means you have more pressure under the wing. That's why wings are curved. You have more pressure, the Venturi principle. And so when an airplane makes a turn, it has to make a banked, round turn to keep enough lift under its wings. That's what we have. And a helicopter is the same thing. The helicopter blades are basically a wing spinning around, and that's what pulls it up. So it's all based upon airfoil. These orange orbs do not use airfoils. They are clearly anti-gravity. They have an anti-gravity mechanism that keeps them up there without any visible means of being up there. They are just floating up there, and they are under intelligent control. They make 90-degree turns, and they can make them in an instant. There's absolutely nothing on Earth that can make a 90-degree turn at a high speed.
Right.
It's impossible with how we fly things.
It doesn't matter if it's a drone or not. I mean, anything would just fall apart, really.
Well, you couldn't do it. You cannot. We would have to stop. You want to make a 90-degree turn? First of all, you couldn't do it in an airplane. Airplane turns are always curved. They have to be.
Yeah. Or
you fall out of the sky. You get a wing stall. You fall out of the sky. Helicopters can make 90-degree turns, but they have to stop and do it. You have to come to a stop, make your turn, and go 90 degrees. But these things turn instantly, and they can also they can move at a rate of speed that we can never dream of moving. They can go from one point of the sky to another point of the sky, maybe 20 miles away, in a tenth of a second. Now, we can't even dream about doing that right now. So, I mean, the answer to your caller is there's nothing that we can do that can do that. So it has to be made somewhere else than on Earth.
Yeah, I mean, that's, in my opinion, the most logical, I would have to say. Now, you mentioned earlier about one particular case where there was more or less an abduction. Are there other cases that talk about these orange orbs and abductions, or was that kind of an atypical situation?
They rarely abduct. There are only a few cases with abductions, and none of them. These two hunters that were taken on board this craft, they were, as I said, treated to disgusting behavior, as they described it.
Right.
They didn't go into detail. I don't think they wanted to. But anyway, they were treated in a way they found disgusting and nauseating, but they weren't harmed in any way. And no one has been taken and not returned. So, but they're not, I think they're the beings that are operating these things, I think, are past the investigative stage where they want to abduct people and do experiments and, study our botany. I think they're past that. And I think right now they're dealing in psychological games right now because I think they've decided that we have reached the stage where we, in our development, that they can safely integrate onto Earth without totally destroying our civilization. So I don't think they need to abduct anymore.
Okay. I'm not sure exactly. I think we got 4 or 5 minutes here. I want to ask you, also, can you describe the occupants in more detail? I mean, did people say, I know you talked about the suits or whatever they appear to be wearing, but what about the head shapes, the eyes, things like that?
Yeah, okay, yeah. With the tall beings, their heads were only they are described as having a very human face, just slightly different. Their heads are a little bit bigger than ours, a little bit more elongated, but very similar to the shape of a head. And they say their eyes are exactly like human eyes, they're just bigger. They're not these. You often see pictures of these slanted, almost Oriental-looking eyes or something in pictures, drawings, whatever. That's not what that's not what the witnesses are saying. They're saying their eyes look quite human, but they're just larger, and they have small noses, no apparent ears, and very small mouths. But they are not like some of these people, they say, oh, they look like lizards or whatever. Well, these people sure don't. Most witnesses describe them as being very human looking.
Wow, interesting. What about hair?
That's an interesting situation. A lot of people describe that there's something with the adults. There's something on their head that it's either hair or like a flap of skin toward the back of it that sort of hangs. A lot of people said that, and they don't describe it as hair. They say you could at first it looks like hair, but then you see it's like skin or something. That's all I can tell you. They're not describing it as hair. It can appear from a distance, but up close, it's more like skin hanging down.
Wow! And the smaller ones, are they very similar to the big ones?
Well, they're not as they're not as muscular looking. It's almost like I think of an adult male, but who's in good shape. Mm-hmm. Tall, muscular. A kid's going to be a little pudgier, and softer looking, and that's how they're described. They're softer looking creatures. They look like kids. They have a childish look.
All right. Well, hey, thanks so much. It's been a real pleasure speaking to you this evening.
Okay. And it's a pleasure for me too.
Yes, and you can find his book on Amazon. So I want to say,
and MUFON.
And MUFON, that's where he prefers you go. Yes.
Yeah.
As
so
we
MUFON
said earlier.
gets the money.
All right. So I want to thank everyone for helping out with the show today. Alejandro Rojas for our news early on. We want to thank our guest, Terry Ray, and Carrie Lloyd Whitehouse, and Bruce Renier for our music. Peggy Shunning for managing our Facebook page. And remember to like us on Facebook for all the latest UFO news. We have Dr. Leo Sprinkle, an old-time investigator, is going to be on next week. You can check us out here live and listen to the whole show at 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is Martin Willis, and that's Wednesday, that is. And we'll see you next week. Keep your eyes to the sky.